Hello everyone, Francis Walsh here again with thedigitalmerchant.com, and today we're going to be discussing where to sell your Amazon FBA business. Now, I would imagine most people who are watching this video know this, but FBA stands for Fulfilled by Amazon. So essentially, instead of taking physical possession of the goods you're selling, you ship them to an Amazon warehouse and let Amazon do the legwork on your behalf. And there have been some hugely successful businesses in this space over the years. The smaller cap ones, they used to be very popular in the peak days of drop shipping. Not so much anymore. It's become more of a competitive space and economies of scale have started to kick in quite a bit. But there is still some great businesses in operation in this space. And there are some really exciting sales happening all the time too. So what we're going to be looking at today are the platforms that you can use if you have reached a certain point with your FBA business and you've decided that now is the time to sell. So firstly, we're going to look at some general pointers, and these are just things that I would generally recommend both in terms of looking at a platform and in terms of approaching the sales process in general. So first of all, you want to look for a platform with a proven track record with FBA. Now, there are a huge number of brokerage platforms out there, regardless of what type of business you're selling. They all have pluses and minuses. And one of the big things I recommend when you're looking into this process is to find a broker that has a track record of the type of business sale that you're embarking upon. So ideally, you want to find a broker who has had successful transactions in the FBA space before. And even more niche than that, if you're selling, we'll say, gardening equipment, it might be a good idea to look for a broker that has a long track record of helping businesses exit that are selling gardening equipment. The next point I've looked at here is buyer network size and quality, and this kind of ties in with the first point in terms of the niche consideration. So if you're in quite a specific niche, we can run the example of gardening tools again. This isn't something that every potential purchaser is going to be interested in. So the bigger the network of buyers you're exposed to, the better your chances of offloading a business like that successfully. So particularly if you're in a niche and kind of a specific area, you're going to want as big a network of buyers as possible. Third point here is support through the process. Now, there's a caveat here, I suppose, in that you get what you pay for. And if you don't need a high level of support, because obviously support is expensive, and if your business isn't particularly high value, or it's not, you're not going to be selling for a 6 or 7 figure sum, it might be better for you to, go down the cheaper route and try and find a business that doesn't offer a huge level of support, but that won't take a huge chunk of your sale value either. So obviously that is a consideration for you to bear in mind and for you to weigh up based on your own situation. Then the fourth thing, fees and commission structure. Obviously, this is pretty self-explanatory. You need to figure out what you're comfortable with parting with and make your decision on that basis. Brokerage firms and platforms and the like, they really range from the most hands-off to, incredibly hands-on. So you'll get everything from just, an online buying and selling platform to full-service white glove M&A firms that will look after every aspect of the sale for you, from valuation to buyer vetting to, listing, advertisement, all that kind of thing. So it's up to you to decide what you're comfortable paying and what company represents the best value for money in that respect. Then experience with deal complexity. This kind of ties into a few of the different things we've mentioned so far, I suppose, in that it depends, first of all, how complex your deal is. If it's a big business, you've got a lot of, detailed accounts and you've got a lot of different revenue streams and that kind of thing. Valuation is going to be more challenging there. So you do need to work with a broker or a consultant who has experience working with that kind of complexity. And not every firm is going to be able to cater to that. And again, I suppose niche experience then is the other big consideration here, because $1 million sale of one type of FBA business isn't the same as a $1 million sale of another type of business. There are various different factors to take into account in terms of buyer appropriateness and valuation methods and all that kind of thing. So again, you're looking for a specific experience at an appropriate price point for you. And they are essentially the two main things you're going to be looking for. So now we're going to dig in and have a look at a few specific brokers and see which ones might represent the best choice for you in your position. So the first one we're going to look at is a broker called Quiet Light. Now, Quiet Light cater to, I would say, the middle section of the market. They're not really for micro companies, young FBA firms that haven't been in business that long and that haven't generated that much revenue. You're probably not going to need the level of service that Quiet Light provides. They typically cater to like businesses in the 6-figure range up into the 7 figures. They can go pretty much as high as you want. You will see businesses there that are in mid to high 7 figures. But the bulk of their business gets done in that middle range. I'm a really big fan of everything Quiet Light do. I think they provide a hell of a service. I know that the founder of this firm was himself a successful entrepreneur and who he had experienced frustration with the exit process, and that was kind of what inspired him to launch this company. And crucially, he only ever hired consultants that had been through similar experiences themselves. So entrepreneurs, people with successful exits in their backgrounds. So that means that when you sign up to Quiet Light as a seller, you're getting exposure to a really, really experienced network of consultants that know exactly what your pain points are, know exactly what your goals are, and know how to seek them out and to fix everything for you. It has a lot of pedigree in the FBA space. It's managed a couple of really big FBA exits. And yeah, to be honest, I don't really have enough good things to say about Quiet Light. I think they're going to know the ins and outs of your business. They're going to take the time to get familiar with you. Their valuation process is much more solid than some of the competitors here. They're quite fair. They're quite rigorous in terms of how they do it. And, reports suggest that their valuation process is agreeable to most sellers. And also, as you can see right up here at the top of their homepage, it's free. So it's a good place to start. If you sign up with them for a consultation, get your business valued for free. If you feel like you're on the right track at that point, then you can continue and there's no obligation up to that point. So yeah, huge fan of Quiet Light, and I think they're a great place to start looking if you're in this position. Next, we're going to be looking at FE International. Now, FE International, I suppose, cater to a similar portion of the market as Quiet Light. Maybe they probably don't maybe go as low in terms of deal value. They're not going to go into the lower 6 figures, certainly not below 6 figures. They are very much a white glove service. They're a real highbrow M&A service provider. I do know of a lot of exits that have gone well that have used FE International. I personally am not a fan of the lack of transparency that you can see here. It's kind of a more traditional brokerage firm in that your involvement in the process through the online platform is not as it's not as involved as it might be with a different firm with a more sophisticated platform. A lot of the communication is done through email and phone, and you're relying on your M&A agent to do a lot of the work for you. And there is a little bit of opacity, I suppose, when it comes to that process and how it's working. Having said that, they take a lot of the hardship off your hands. They do a really, really good job of vetting and valuation. And they can expose you to a really good network of buyers. I just would be a little bit concerned about the transparency, and if you want to be that little bit more involved in the sale of your business, I would probably look elsewhere. So the next company we're looking at is essentially the complete opposite of the two we have just examined, Flippa. And Flippa is essentially just, as it kind of says here, a platform. Now it says to buy and sell blogs. It does deal with other types of companies as well, and particularly in the e-commerce space and in FBA, it's very active, as you can see here, Shopify stores. So it does, it deals with a lot of companies in that kind of e-commerce vertical. Really, I wouldn't recommend Flippa to anyone who's outside the 5-figure sale range. I think if you're $100,000 and up, I would be looking at Quiet Light or an alternative like that, just because you're going to want that level of service. You're going to want the access to a consultant. You're going to want the extra vetting. You're going to want the proper valuation process. Because at the end of the day, when all this is left to you, it's leaving a lot of hard work on your hands, and also you're probably not that experienced in it realistically. If you're going to deal with a big exit, you kind of want a specialist who has done lots of those things before. If you sign up to Flippa, you're going to be dealing with a lot of unqualified buyers, a lot of outright scam artists, and there's going to it's a case of finding the needle in the haystack, I suppose. There are obviously good offers on Flippa, But I just think if you are dealing with a higher value business, it's not the right place to start looking. And next we're going to look at Onfolio. Now Onfolio is kind of different again to anything we've looked at in that it's not a broker, it's not a listing platform, it is actually typically an acquirer of businesses. So the majority of people watching this video, I'm not sure if Onfolio is going to be right for you. It's essentially really only for high value, highly profitable businesses. I believe it only looks at businesses that are profiting to the tune of 7 figures a year, so making like $1 million or more in profit a year, which is obviously a huge number. But if you are in that bracket, if you are turning around that kind of profit, Onfolio is certainly worth looking at. I think it takes a lot of the pain out of the brokerage arrangement and about dealing with potential buyers and looking at negotiations. If you can just offload your business to Onfolio and you're getting a good price, it takes a lot of the heat out of that process, which is great. I just think it is for a very specific part of the FBA market. I don't know if it's going to be applicable to everyone viewing, but if this is you, certainly give Onfolio a look. And lastly, then we're going to look at businessesforsale.com. Now, this kind of does a little bit of everything. It's a really interesting platform. It sells, as you can see here in the kind of the featured section. We have physical properties. We have like a sport fishing business. It's not limited at all to the e-commerce world or the online world or anything like that. It caters to every type of business. Now, this, of course, this video obviously is about FBA businesses, which do exist very much in the online world. Even more online than your average e-commerce site, in the sense that everything you're doing is online. You're not doing fulfillment yourself. You're not typically storing stuff yourself. So you do kind of want a broker that has that online first focus. And I personally am a big fan of specialization. I do recommend it to everyone to try and look for something that caters to your niche. I'm not sure if businessesforsale.com for that reason would be suitable for a lot of the people watching this video, except for, look, as I said, FBA does cover a lot of ground. If you do operate in a very specific niche of FBA and you think the businessesforsale.com is the place that you might be most likely to find your buyer, then definitely it is worth a look, because the other thing about it is it's quite cheap to list on compared to some of the other platforms you've looked at here. It's not going to break the bank. And it has, as you can see up here, a huge marketplace of buyers and a huge marketplace of businesses for sale as well. So yeah, that's what I'd say about businesses for sale. I think if you've got a very specific niche you think you might be able to find a buyer for it there, definitely have a look, and it's a pretty low risk investment. So there are a couple of others that I wanted to drop in here that I didn't really have time to look at in great detail. If you want to pause the video at this point and maybe have a look at them and just see if any of them might be suitable for you, or if there's something in particular about them that appeals to you, then great. I do think they do great business. I think very good transactions get done on these platforms. I probably just wouldn't know them as well really as the other platforms that I've looked at here. Again, as I was kind of saying with businessesforsale.com, if there's a very specific detail about your sale that kind of sets it apart and that maybe doesn't make it suitable to the average mainstream platform in this space, then it's kind of worth shopping around and kind of trying to see, what specific platform might suit your business best. So, for that reason, if you really want to do your research, you can have a look at all of these as well. You might find something you like, and you might find something that would be really suitable for you. And so, final thoughts. I suppose I've really hammered this point today, but be very niche specific. Like, the FBA business is niche enough by itself. It's changing all the time. It has developed massively over the last 10 years and will only continue to do so. You do need, particularly if you're higher value stuff, you do need a firm on your side that's going to be really familiar with the niche, that knows your pain points, that knows how to expose you to buyers that are going to make you a proper offer. So just be very, very careful about that your specific needs are being catered to. Lean on your network is something else I'd say. Like, if you have, presumably you might have contacts in the space. If you've been doing this for a while, or if you've been, if you're an experienced entrepreneur, you probably know someone who maybe has been through a similar exit. I would recommend contacting them. I would recommend getting their recommendations for a peace of mind perspective as much as anything else, because obviously if you know someone and trust someone and they tell you that a certain broker is the way you want to go, then that is obviously huge, and it's probably more valuable to you than anything I can say. Third is do your homework. This really doesn't just apply to your broker, but it kind of applies to everything. Look into your buyers especially if you're using something like Flippa, where it's just kind of a platform as opposed to a brokerage service. Look into your buyers, do your homework, kick the tires, make sure everything checks out. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. And it also applies to your own pre-sale or pre-listing processes. Make sure your books are in order, make sure you've documented your processes, and make sure you know what a fair valuation looks like, because some of these platforms will value your business for you, and if you take it at face value, you might be leaving money on the table. So you just need to make sure you're prepared and you take the process seriously. And as I kind of covered above, don't take my word for it. I am not the absolute be all and end all as far as expertise in this area is concerned. Reach out to people, lean on your network, have discussions, take your time over it. Especially the higher value it is, the more careful you need to be. Do as much research as you can and as you can justify. Because at the end of the day, I think a lot of business owners kind of overlook the exit process. They think, oh, well, I've dumped a certain amount of years into this and my sweat equity is this much, and now it's time to kind of exit and relax. And they just kind of view the exit as the bit at the end. But this is a really crucial time for you if you're trying to maximize the value of what you're selling and if you're trying to get the most money out of it and get the best deal. So just take your time, reach out to your people, have as many discussions as you have time for, and go from there before you make any big decisions. But yeah, best of luck to anyone undergoing the exiting process at the moment. I know it can be stressful, but there's light at the end of the tunnel. If you've got to the stage where you're considering brokers, then you're nearly there. That's all for me on this video, and I'll see you in the next one.